All right, still in chapter 17. I got a little bit of last week. This is the German archaeologist from 100 years ago, Robert Coldway, probably not pronouncing that correctly, was excavating before World War One, and he found all these colored bricks, and he sent them back to Berlin to reassemble, and it is the Ishtar Gate for Babylon. So that is the gate you would have seen when you went in. Sitting in, yeah, well, it was like a big puzzle, but it's sitting in Berlin, which blows my mind. You'd think, you know, but 19, yeah, this is Babylon today. Babylon, it is a religious center and a commercial center. At least that's what the passages, this passage or this chapter deals more with the religious offspring of Babylon, if you will. Chapter 18 will deal more with the political and commercial side of it. These are the top one is the original mother child worship that came out of Babylon. Semiramis, wife of Nimrod, had a son by divine inspiration. And the rest, these get copied through time. And the reason I had brung them up last week is because when you get to around people in the occult, they'll claim that Christ is a copy of this. If you only look at mother son, then it seems like it, but when you start getting into the details, it's not. But I think I said last week, it's not surprising with the prophecy in Genesis 3:15 that Satan would try to produce a seed.
The one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and talked with me, saying to me, Come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters, with whom the king of the earth committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, with which was full of names of blasphemy, had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold, precious stones, pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abomination and abomination and the filthiness of her fornication. And on her forehead a name was written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abomination of the earth.
I believe this is the slide that we had stopped at last time. So we made it real far. Coming into chapter 16, we had the seven bowls, and the seventh bowl is leading into the return of Christ, which will be chapter 19, starting at verse 11. So after, in between this, one of the angels comes and gets John and says, I'm going to show you what's going to happen to Babylon, both the religious and the political system. Um, John comes with him to see the destruction of Babylon, representing false religion, and to view the judgment of the woman who rides the beast. The harlot, in today's terms, might be better translated as prostitute. To prostitute something is to take an item and use it in a way it was never intended to be used. All through the Bible, when harlotry or adultery is spoken of in a spiritual sense, it's always, well, Israel chasing after other gods instead of serving God. They're committing fornication. They're chasing the harlot. Um, in these verses here, the earth dwellers, the people taken in, they've become drunk with her wine and immorality, and this apostate religion is aligned with the rulers of the world. It's working in conjunction with them for a time. Enough of a review? Because I feel like I've went over all that before. I feel dumb kind of reading it again.
I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement. But the angel said to me, why did you marvel? I will tell you the mysteries of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns.
One wondered with great admiration. I believe that's the way the King James puts it. Admiration is probably not the best word to use in today's English. The Greek thauma means a wonder or an astonishment. You think John was shocked at what he was seeing? I mean, come on. John was on the Isle of Patmos for following Christ. I mean, Fox's Book of Martyrs says that they tried to boil him in oil and it didn't kill him, and Domitian didn't know what else to do, so he banished him to a prison island. He's expecting Rome to be persecuting the true saints. What about this harlot astonished him?
Big old beast with 7 heads and 10 horns.
I think it's astonishment. People coming out of the church itself going after the real believers.
Now he's going to tell him the mysteries of it, but before he tells him,
Well, he's like,
this is probably a beautiful woman.
yeah. Well,
It always looks good until you find out the truth.
he's more or less asking, why are you surprised?
That's just like when you mentioned ISIS. I remember as a kid, people had took ISIS and made her a superhero, which fought against evil.
You know, as a
She's evil herself, according to where they got it from.
I always liked role-playing games like Final Fantasy and stuff, and it's kind of funny later on the names of some of the entities in there, the Espers, the ISIS. That's the names I keep running into in these ancient religions. And
According to them, ISIS actually created light and land and all of that.
yeah,
It said water grew up on the rock.
it's
It's really, if you read about it, you see how much it goes along.
I know it's
There's
the,
nothing new under
the
the sun.
the Japanese that wrote some of those games I played did not invent their own names. They borrowed from mythology quite a bit. But the love of a harlot is feigned love, a pretend affection to gain favors. And she's riding the beast. Remember, the beast from chapter 13 is a government system and the leader of that government system. She thinks she's in control, but she's not. She's convenient for the moment. She is pictured here drunk with the blood of the saints, which the saints who have been martyred for Jesus. She is not only the source of evil apostate Christendom, but is also actively engaged in the persecution of its true saints. Here is a reference as in relation to those being killed for their faith in Christ. And this is the point I think John was dumbfounded over is, you know, she's drunk with the blood of those who are martyring Jesus. She's supposed to, you know, she's this amazing religion is after the followers, the real followers.
The beast that you saw was and is not and will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go to perdition, and those who dwell on the earth will marvel, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast that was and is not and yet it is.
It's a very confusing phrase, isn't it? The beast has existed, he does not exist, but he will exist. This beast is a kingdom that existed in the past, ceased to exist, but will exist again in the last days. The most common phrase you're going to hear in prophecy circles is a revived Roman Empire. Rome is also probably where the Antichrist will rise from. Now, Rome, as you get to following empires, Rome is the only empire that was never conquered by another empire. It just fell apart. History dates 476 when the trying to think of the group. They came in and raided Rome. They date that as the fall of Rome in our Western culture, but we forget the Byzantine Empire went on till 1500s. And if you walked into Rome in the 5, 6, 700s, the city or any of they would still consider themselves the country of Rome. In the 800s, you had Charlemagne and the Holy Roman Empire. So there's still groups trying to, Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall. They're trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together. Mussolini envisioned rebuilding the Roman Empire. Scripture seems to indicate at some point, somehow it will come back together in some form. Which also, in a different way, makes sense to me because things that were in existence when Christ came the first time would be here when he comes the second time. Some of the people I was listening to talking about in the Old Testament, you don't hear a lot about demonic things till Christ comes, and then you see a rise in demonic activity, and then it just kind of levels off, and they postulate that if he gets near again, you will have another rise in demonic activity. The bottomless pit is the eventual home of Satan and those that follow him. It indicates that this revived empire is rising from satanic control and influence. The beast that rises from the bottomless pit, that description was also used to describe the Antichrist, who will succeed in killing the two witnesses in chapter 11, verse 7. Satan, this government, and the Antichrist are all referred to as the beast, which indicates how close this religious system is. She's riding it. She's playing with it, and it's kind of like, I guess, riding a horse. You think you're in control, but if that horse decides it doesn't want you in control anymore, you find out who's really controlling. The horse is only letting you control him.
Here is the mind which was wisdom The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the women sit. There are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, one is, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must continue a short time.
which is referring back to Daniel again, but I've went over those scriptures several times. The explanation of the beast anticipates the complexity of the revelation to follow. John is told that spiritual wisdom is required to understand that which he is seeing. And some of these things will probably make sense when these times, just like the 666, it's not fully going to make sense until it's here. But many people have connected these 7 mountains as the 7 hills that Rome sits on. Maybe. But there are a lot of cities that sit on 7 hills. But I can see the leaning towards Rome. But I wouldn't jump up and down on that. Mountains in the Bible can also represent governments. Daniel 2:35, Habakkuk 3:6, Zechariah 4:7. And the word kings and kingdom is kind of the same word in Greek. It can be interpreted either way because the king is seen as representing the kingdom. If it was interpreted as kingdom, these are the 7 major kingdoms. Well, 6, the 7th one has not yet throughout history. You know, first we had Egypt, the children of Egypt. And these are all kingdoms that directly involve Israel too. Israel is the center point of the Bible. The whole Old Testament is focused on Israel. The Assyrian Empire, which was then conquered by the Babylonian, which was conquered by Persia, which Alexander the Great, Greece conquered, which Rome conquered, and then Rome fell apart. In John's time, Rome existed. He's on the Isle of Patmos because of Rome. The 7th is believed what will exist again in the last days. Back in Revelation 12:3, we saw the dragon, Satan, having 7 heads. He possesses these kingdoms. They are his super kingdoms. You know, Luke 4:6, Satan states that he shows Jesus all the kingdoms of the world in a moment, and he offers them to Jesus. The thing I always noted, Jesus did not say they don't belong to you and rebuke him. He rebuked him as, get behind me, serve God alone. He did not argue that Satan possessed these. He is the ultimate power behind all this.
And the beast that was and is not is himself also the 8th, and is of the 7, and is going to perdition.
The 8th empire is also of the 7th and going into perdition. The 8th, in my opinion, is when the Antichrist takes over. He's taking over the 7th. But he is creating a new, it is the previous kingdom, but it is under his absolute rule in the second half of the tribulation. This is also the 8th horn, and the 8th is also the 11th horn of Daniel 7, spoken of earlier in chapter 12. 8 through 11 symbolize a Gentile world power in alliance with an apostate worldwide religion, which together is after those who follow Jesus, who truly follow Jesus. The Jesus of the Bible, not the Jesus of the New Age. Love, love, love. Would never condemn a horse fly. I hope y'all know what Jesus I'm talking about.
The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. These are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast.
Any of y'all watched any, being older, watch some of the people that would talk about prophecy 20, 30, 40 years ago, and they were watching as the European Union was coming together, and four, four, four nations have joined the European, 5, 6. When we get to 10, we're there. This is where they get that. And everything was going good till 11 nations joined. I am not 100% sure how this will play out. I'm going to give my opinion. There is a lot of talk about dividing the world into 10 regions, where somebody would be appointed over the regions. But if it doesn't play out like that, I don't know. I just take that thing about the European Union as a warning about some of this. And this is another point. This group, it will be in the tribulation, and I firmly believe when the Antichrist has died and rises again, when he dies, they're going to be in power. When he rises, they're going to hand him the reins of the kingdom. 3 of them will fight him, and as Daniel says, he will uproot those 3. There's not going to be much of a fight. The one thing to note in this also is these are 10 kings. They have not received a kingdom yet. They will be ruling at the same time. Could also be kingdoms, 10 countries, maybe if I put it in today's vernacular. They will rule for 1 hour, so their rule will be very brief, and they're rising up, being allowed to rise to give what they have to this one. Boy, it is coming down, isn't it?
There will wage war against the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, because he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who are with him are the called and chosen and faithful.
Just like the harlot who's going after the saints of the Lamb, these kings, their desire is to destroy the followers of the Lamb. We know who the Lamb is, right? Jesus. This battle is futile. Jesus will win and set up his kingdom. He's promised all through the Old Testament. I mean, Psalms 2 immediately comes to my mind when I read this stuff. Now, I put Psalms 2 up there a couple weeks ago.
Then he said to me, the waters which you saw were where the harlot sat are people, multitude, nations, and tongues.
You like the picture? That is from the World Games last year. If you look, you see a woman riding the beast. This is what they did for the show. And these people are worshiping. They probably have never read, but they're doing, yes, it's not a 7-headed beast. They're playing out the tale of Europa. Zeus came down from heaven. He saw a girl he really was infatuated with. So he took on the form of a bull and took the girl to a desert. The girl's name was Europa. He took her to an island and seduced her, and I can't remember if Hercules was the offspring or whatever. But it just caught me how close they're worshiping the beast, a mechanical beast, with a woman sitting on top of it. In verse 1, we seen the harlot was sitting on many waters. Here the description and the symbolic meaning of the waters is given. She's in control of the people, multitude, nations, and tongues. The situation is one of great political power on part of the beast, but he's sharing the rule with the woman who's controlling the multitudes. This first half of the tribulation. Sitting on top of the people suggests that at least for a time, this quasi-religious system will dominate the people of the world. Till he, quote, rises from the dead and proves to the world he is God, and then he'll have no use for.
And the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these will hate the harlot, make her desolate and naked, and eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose, to be of one mind, and to give their kingdoms to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. The woman who you saw is the great city which reigns over the kingdom of the earth.
So here again, we have that woman referring to a city. She's called the Babylon, the harlot, mystery Babylon, which is referring to a city, but many commentators take that to refer once again to Rome. Could be, I'm not so sure, but anything you read that's 20 years or more old in this area is going to call this, even going back to the reformers, they were convinced this was Rome. And like I said in the previous, these 10 kings, they hate the followers of the Lamb, but they also hate the harlot. They're both pursuing the saints of the Most High, but they're also they're working together, but they don't like each other. The harlot is at the midpoint. She is stripped of her possessions, her flesh is eaten, and her body is burned. These graphic words picture the downfall of the apostate religious system. I mean, you can say you don't like somebody, and then you can really say you don't like somebody. During the first half of the 7-year tribulation, the apostate religious system will flourish, and it has influential power all over the world. In this time, there is a measure of religious freedom, as all but followers of the true Messiah are allowed to flourish. This will end at the midpoint, where the false prophet directs all to worship the risen Antichrist. He, at this point, no longer needs this false church, and he and his minions will destroy it, replacing it with himself. He will be the center of worship. According to verse 13:8, back to chapter 13, people who do not accept Jesus will give their worship and allegiance to him and follow him even to his eventual end. In Daniel 11:36 through 39, we further learn that the Antichrist will put aside all other deities as well. He is God, and all must recognize and worship him as God. The last verse of this chapter identifies the harlot with a great city that rules over kings. There is good evidence to say that could be Rome. if you want to understand medieval Europe for the last 2,000 years, you will not fully understand it if you don't understand the Catholic Church and how they have worked in the background controlling kings and dictating what has went on. I feel this is something a little above. It's going to have parts of the Catholic leadership, but I feel like there's going to be more in it than just the Pope. But I can see the connection people have made to this. When we get into the next chapter, it's going to focus on Babylon, the political and economic system. But as chapter 17, the religious system, Babylon as a religious system was the focus. The timing is the start of the Great Tribulation. She will be destroyed by the beast and the 10 kings, and nobody will mourn this. The rulers are happy to get rid of her. It's going to be the opposite with the next chapter. So that's kind of the end of chapter 18. What? 17. And I kind of want to hold getting into 18. So, how close are we to some of this? The most popular apostasy in Christendom today is the teaching that God has revealed himself in many different ways to different cultures, and that therefore all religions worship the same God but use different names. From this viewpoint, the Allah of Islam is the same as the Yahweh of Judaism, and both are the same as the Krishna of Hindu. The natural conclusion that is drawn from this apostate idea is that there are many different paths to God. Jesus is only one of them. This has led liberal leaders of groups like the National Council of Churches in the United States and the World Council to condemn missionary activity or trying to convert someone as arrogant and anti-cultural. It's a quote from an article from Dr. David Reagan. This thing in the bottom here, has anybody heard about the Abrahamic family house in Abu Dhabi? It went active in February of 2023. One of those is a mosque, one is a synagogue, and one is the church dedicated to Pope Francis. They're all three the Abrahamic faith. Now, if you've read, Jews do not accept that Jesus was the Messiah. Islam does not accept that Jesus was the Messiah. In fact, if you say, well, they accept he was a Messiah, but not the terminology that a Christian would use. They deny that he was the Son of God. They deny that he died on the cross. They denied that he can save you. In fact, the quote there from 1 John 4:2 and 3, Islam denies all that. And if I put the rest of the quote up there, this is one of the two places that has the word Antichrist in it. How can you have three faiths right there and working together that their core tenets say that they are the only true faith and that the others are apostates? A few weeks ago, I think I sent you the clip. You had a guy named Harari that's claiming that we need to use AI to write a new Bible because AI is becoming our new God and it can write a better Bible than the one that we have, which was myth.
You got 7 symbols up there. Can you tell me what each of those symbols? I know what some of them, Judaism
The first one is Islam. The second is the peace symbol,
is what?
peace sign.
Okay.
I believe, I'd have to look that. I believe that's male and female deities. The star is the Star of David. The S is Taoism. The I, I'm not sure, and T is Christianity. Every, I will tell you, every one of those religions, if you read them, they all claim to be the only path, and they all contradict. That's why it's sticker. You see this sticker on cars. It blows my mind having studied religions, because you can only believe that if you never read what they teach. Because Islam, we were all born Muslims, and the fact that we're not Muslims now, we've left Islam, and that is the reason Osama bin Laden used in his writings when he attacked the World Trade Towers, because Islam says if you leave Islam, you are to be killed. We were born Muslims. We're not Muslims. We left Islam. That was his reasoning.
That on the card just to show that therefore acceptance.
Yes, but what to me, having read most of these, they show their ignorance.
C is for the crescent and star representing Islam. The O being dotted with karma wheel is Buddhism. E
Okay.
is the energy and the relatively equation science. X illustrating the Star of David for Judaism. The I dotted with the peace symbol. S for the Teo symbol, and T for the cross for Christianity.
I spent a lot of time. I don't know how to sum up the emergent church movement in simple words, but in Christianity, you have a group. They're trying not to be known by the emergent now because it's got a bad name, but Brian McLaren, Rick Warren, Rob Bell, which I don't even think he's got a church now, but they're all trying to go embrace all these religions as one. I mean, Rick Warren pretty well says that the Islam and Christianity worship the same God, and he has been a part and led a movement that's called Chrislam. We don't say anything bad about Islam. It's the same God. They just worship in their own way. Islam denies
In Christ.
they believe in a Christ, but Paul, I think in 1 Corinthians 15 says, Christ and him crucified and raised from the dead is the heart of the gospel. That's exactly what Islam denies.
The way they got it is like it coexists. Is that
Well, there's a big move.
all exist together?
Oh yeah, there's a big movement pushing that in the world today, and it's growing. 2014, Kenneth Copeland had a guy on his show, Tony Palmer, who is a Catholic priest, and you can find this clip on YouTube, where Tony Palmer is playing a video from Pope Francis on his phone for the crowd and Kenneth Copeland. And Kenneth Copeland declares that the Reformation is over and we got to rejoin the Catholic Church. And you realize the Catholic Church for 2,000 years has declared anybody outside the Catholic Church an anathema?
Take this sticker that they put together, and they said that's just proof that we are to accept one another because it actually spells out coexist.
Well,
And they said that's a sign. Yeah, it's a sign.
we're supposed to have unity in Christ. Him died, buried, resurrection. We agree with that. We're union. We're not supposed to have unity for unity. If they don't agree with that, we're not to unite with them. We're not to shun them, but there's got to be a difference. You know, we don't.
How can you be
Ex-
whole to this?
Yeah. If I don't know how else to put it, and like I said, I sent y'all a video on the emergent church, and it's like, man, I'd spend 3 hours going over that stuff. So I'm gonna end it here, but I invite you just to Google some of it, or I'll send you the video, because I mean I've got several resources on it actually, but I'm gonna stop it here.